it's Hello, and welcome to this episode of Media Musings, Season 2, Episode 6, where we are finishing off the ineffable Satire Month with a discussion on satire.
It's ineffable.
It's
not.
It's a good word. It's a good word, though. I like that word.
It's a good word, but satire is not ineffable. It is definable.
Yes, but...
definitely.
Yeah, but this month becoming Satire Month is ineffable.
Yeah. So, how do you want to start?
So, let's start with, what is satire?
Cool. You get hissy in lecture mode. Right.
Yes.
Now, I'm reading these notes from a lecture I sat in my third year of undergraduate study, where I took a module on satire. So, nice and academic for you folks.
Yes.
So, the broad stroke summary definition at the top of the page is satire starts from an implied contrast between how things should be and how they are. So you start at a little distance with virtue or some things to know. Traditionally 7 virtues of justice, wisdom, temperance, fortitude, and the theological virtues of faith, hope, and charity, i.e. love. And then opposite of that is vice. Vices are generally ethically bad practices, your 7 deadly sins being your main examples. Although there are far more, that list goes on and on. Both of these virtues and vices are habits. They are things we do. They are actions. They're not single isolated incidents. They are something that is ongoing. And we tend to identify these by considering justice, laws, honour, opinion, good reputation, and how our actions define us with regards to that, whether we are virtuous or vicious, as the case may be. And I am getting a bit philosophical. Stop me if it gets too academic.
I do have a question, though, but it's about the chat. It's about the chat, because I was just wondering, from what Dave said, is he actually going dogging?
I'm not sure I want to know.
Knowing Dave, it's definitely possible. Perhaps even plausible.
Yep.
Woof.
Not ineffable.
It's ineffable.
Yeah.
So the main standard for satire is mankind, whether as individuals or groups, are unlikely to be as virtuous as one would like, being either partially or wholly vicious. So satire then takes advantage of this cognitive problem by pointing it out.
Damn it, Jen.
Yeah. Damn it, Jen. So
Damn it, Jen.
one way we do this is to satirize it. And they say satire has 4 distinct features. It instructs by example, so satire will always show you what should be, either implicitly or otherwise. Sometimes these are disguised or made symbolic or generalized, and the instruction is always oblique, so it's not clear. So it it shows you something by presuming a set of values and seeing someone do the opposite of them. It's funny when we see, a dishonest politician in satire because the ideal is an honest politician.
Yeah. Or for instance, when Mr. Swift has a modest proposal for some people.
I'm getting to that. Hold on. I'm getting there. And then the final point is it will always exaggerate the fault.
Yeah.
To some extent to make it clear it's satire. So one of the earliest forms of satire we have is a caricature, which is very clearly it's very simple satire, but it satirizes the physical form of famous figures or public figures.
Yes. Usually
with an aim to point out their deficiencies of beauty or something like that. Yeah. This then develops into symbolism of, well, if that character's got a big nose, they must be a liar. If they've got big ears, they're always listening out for gossip, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And these symbols
I have the biggest hands, the best hands.
See, that's satire. That's satire.
I thought you said tans for a second. I was going to get orange tans. Yep.
Yeah. The main point of satire as well is you don't attack an individual by name. It's always made in reference. It's never done pointedly. This is because when you attack by name, it becomes narrowly personal, and it loses that broader.
You end up walking the line of slander
and appeal
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
It's a question of prudence.
Because if it's written, it's libel.
Yes, so it's a question of prudence that you don't name whoever it is you're satirizing outright. So that's your basic, what is satire?
Yeah.
That's that bit. There are various examples. The first example I've got is actually Dryden's Absalom and Achitophel.
Yeah.
Which is a satire from the 1600s, notably about the Whigs. It's a great.
Oh, okay.
It's a.
Also, we have a bit of a modern example right here.
Yeah.
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 Thank you, Titan Uranus.
But I think the way you can tell a satire will always be, do you have to understand the political context it was written in order to fully understand the jokes?
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, if that's the point you're making, then it's a satire.
Yeah.
As long as it's not obviously, joking about someone specific and naming them.
Yeah. I think the best satire, though, is the ones that can work even if they can still be funny and still work even if you don't know the exact situation.
Yeah. The best satires are definitely like that. That's another reason why you don't name the character, because it then becomes far too narrow. I'm just looking at my read. Wow. When you realize how little you remember from university.
Yeah.
Think about me. It's been even longer.
Yeah. The week 3 lecture was on Defoe. Week 4 was the Robinocracy.
Wow.
Vindication.
Did you say lubrication?
Burke's Vindication. A vindication of natural society.
Yeah, so it's actually quite a while before you get to Mr. Swift's proposal.
Yeah. Because it was done in there. Now, I do love this comment from my lecturer on this. At the top of the reading list, it says, satire is better read than read about.
Yeah.
which, yeah, because it's really very difficult to conceptualize and really pin down a proper academic discussion of what satire is.
Yeah. And the thing is,
and it's deliberate.
Also, another thing that makes satire a particularly fascinating topic is that it is rather difficult to use well, and even if you use it well, people will still miss the point.
Oh yeah. I remember doing a lot on satirical prints in the American Revolution. So
I'm going to have to log out and then try and restart my machine and come back in a few minutes. I'm having a couple of technical issues here. So
okay.
No worries, Jeff. I'll see you in a bit.
Yeah, we saw what happened with the technical issues on the live stream. So
okay.
So yeah, Jeff's PC just decided it hated him.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the historical basis for satire, and I've talked a lot now. I've talked for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But essentially, what we're saying is it's a commentary on what is over and what should be.
Yeah.
At its core, that's all satire is. Anything that says this is funny because it's not the ideal is satire.
Yeah.
And often it will go over people's heads, especially if they're not totally aware of what the satire is hinting at. I mean,
very early satires, caricatures, etc., didn't, but as you got into the more in-depth satires, the more it became more elevated. Satire started out as it was for the common man.
Yeah.
It was released in, penny newspapers, that kind of thing. And it was caricature. It was very simplistic. It was fart jokes and big ears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't the most intelligent comedy out there. But then the upper classes started to get hold of it. You had people like Dryden come in, Burke came in. And these are, we're talking contemporaries of Shakespeare. We're talking,
even Shakespeare did his own.
Even Shakespeare wasn't exactly highbrow.
No.
And he did his own fair share of satire as well.
Yeah.
They all did.
A lot of his dramas you can look at and say, hang on, that's a satire of something.
Yeah.
And
I'm only bringing this up because Dr. Faustus will be the conclusion to the upcoming Lit Month. But there are satirical elements in Dr. Faustus.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly poking fun at academics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Marlowe does a lot with satire in Edward II as well.
Yeah.
So it is
even more modern authors. I mean, there's a lot of satire in a lot of modern books. I mean, everything that Terry Pratchett ever wrote while he was alive was a satire of something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you've got the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Douglas Adams' work.
There's
Monty Python.
Yeah,
definitely Monty Python. But I mean, anyone who is a comedy troupe like that is going to have it. Even down to the Goodies was full of satire.
And thank you, Amiga Nuts, and of course my it's at the before I actually started the intro was a nod to Monty Python.
Yes.
And I mean, Monty Python is amazing. Not all of Monty Python has aged well.
Yeah.
It hasn't, but a lot of it, I think the satire develops. The problem with satire is I find it's as much about the reception as it is about the presentation.
Yeah.
It is.
And if you are not primed to receive it properly, you're going to miss it, or you're going to misinterpret it.
So when the satire itself was a product of the time it was made.
Yeah.
So if you take it outside of that time zone, and you can't think how things were then, you're going to miss a lot of the point of it.
Yeah.
Or this is usually the case. This is seems to be more often the case when satire isn't done well. But like, for example, I ran afoul of some badly done satire recently on Twitter.
It wasn't badly done. You were just being dim.
Potato.
Blame the satire, not the person reading it.
Again, it's the context. You didn't have the context for it, so you missed it.
Yeah.
And there's a great little quote I'm going to read out now. I can't remember the lecturer's name for these lectures, so I obviously can't cite him properly, but these are not my words. This is my lecturer's words. He says, historians are necessarily satirists. That is to say, an account of how the world works is bound to cause dismay and laughter in equal proportions.
Yeah.
Which I love, because that in itself is a satirical comment.
Yeah.
It is.
It's both an example and an explanation. And there's a quote here from Gibbon. So I presume that's Edward Gibbon. Although it may not be. It's a historian Gibbon, so there's a couple of them, but it will be one of the Gibbons, where he says, history is indeed little more than the register of the crimes, of follies, and the misfortunes of mankind. Which is just fun.
Doorknob head.
Yeah. Lecturer McLecture face.
Yeah, lecturer McLecture face.
I don't know. I just remember.
Bodie!
Yeah, no. I literally just remember this lecturer as the Bat, because in 3 years of undergraduate, he was the only lecturer I had who lectured in academic ropes. So he was just the Bat.
He was the Bat.
Yeah.
Where are the grades?
There will be a little foolish wand waving. Old enough to play Dumbledore with a temper like Snape.
Yeah.
So,
but and since I didn't do so before, currently we have in the chat a bit of tea and Danish. Dave popped out for a dog. We don't know if he's letting the dog out or if he's having a salacious encounter.
He might be going to see a man about a dog.
Yeah. We also have
a man about a dogging.
We also have Titan Uranus, Doorknob Head, and Amiga Nuts, and of course, welcome to anyone who might be lurking in the chat or might be watching in the future.
Yeah,
so many fun names to trip over there.
Yeah,
but
there is.
So
glad you read them.
Yeah, why do you think I kept my mouth shut? But you see satire as well, I think, in stuff that doesn't necessarily try to be satirical.
Yeah.
You get stuff like, this is the 9 o'clock news. Have I got news for you? Mock the week. Where they are
That's
pointedly...
news to me.
Yeah. Didn't you have...
Thank you.
Who's the guy you had, Stephen something or another over in America?
Colbert.
Yeah. All that kind of stuff. They are pointedly picking at the space between what is and what should be.
Yeah.
Russia Today does a lot of it with Lee Camp, stuff like that. And that's
Stephen Colbert is actually not the man, not the man himself, but the character he plays for the Colbert Show is as a satirical caricature of a conservative.
Yeah, Jonathan Pye in the UK is a satirical representation of a newsreader.
Yeah.
That's a character, it's not actually him.
Yeah.
And we see that people, that is sort of the higher level satire where they're really having a dig, and it's not just at surface level. Caricatures, big ears, big nose, small hands.
Yeah.
So that brings on to the question: should there be something that's considered taboo for satire? Are there topics that satire shouldn't cover? I know this sort of edges on that thing. Should anything be available to make jokes about?
Well, I think
it depends on how you do it.
Yeah, I think satire
and who does it.
Yeah, I think satire, should follow the main rule of comedy. Don't punch down. Yeah, don't punch down, punch up.
I agree.
That is a very important part of satire as well. It punches up, always.
Yeah.
It punches up.
Or sideways. I've seen people punch sideways, and I don't have a problem with that
Sideways
either.
I'm not so too bothered about, but yeah, it is the whole punching down is, I mean, I always like. I'll give an example of something. There's a comedian I quite like. I know Hissy's not a big fan of him, but he said something quite good about this, and it was like, about really, a role of a comedian who doing anything along the lines of a satire. And it's this guy by the name of Stuart Lee, and he was doing a talk about this at Brooks College, and for example, we've brought up there's another well-known Scottish stand-up called Frankie Boyle, who's
very close to the knuckle.
Very close to the knuckle. He's sometimes
he's funny though,
occasionally brilliant, but at times he's punchy. Times he picks on soft targets and it doesn't come across. And he said, for example, like he said, what Stuart Lee said it very well, like Katie Price's autistic son. I didn't notice him getting above himself. Was Stuart Lee's comment? Where it's like, so why is he a target? Why would is he like someone like a valid target?
He's not. Katie Price is the target.
Yeah, by her own admission as well. She actually said, I can take any of the jokes about that, but my autistic
leave
son,
my kids out of it.
My severely autistic son should be off limits, and which I absolutely agree with what she said there.
And cripes, brain.
Brain. Yeah. And again, it's the John Cleese comment of, if you can't stand to be laughed at, you deserve to be laughed at.
Yeah.
But
satire is very good at pointing out when people take themselves too seriously.
Yeah.
Well, no, I generally think as well that I think most people are quite content to have a joke at their expense, and most groups are welcome to have a joke at their expense. But it very much depends on how a joke is done, and if it's done in a very lazy
and who does it.
And if it's done in a lazy and stereotypical kind of way, people aren't going to necessarily like that.
Well, I mean, to be fair, that comment was passed in defense of Life of Brian when the church came out against it.
Yeah.
So in that particular context, that comment makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
but this is the thing. This is why Life of Brian is a satire of Christianity. It never names Jesus. The thing about satire is it's always defensible, because you can defend satire by saying, but I wasn't talking about that. And if your satire is done properly, they can't prove it was.
Yeah. Or, even within Life of Brian, the few times that Jesus is mentioned or even depicted, it's done very respectfully. And, I see more Life of Brian more of it as a satire on religion and blind faith above anything else. Maybe more so than just Christianity, really. But just it's a satire on blind faith and people not thinking for themselves. Is a lot of what that's about.
I think it's different if you're talking about subjects than when you're talking about people.
Yeah.
If the way you talk about the subject is directly attacking people, like if you're attacking a minority by talking about a subject, then that's a bit different. Like if you're talking about something that black people do, then you're basically attacking all black people if you're doing it the wrong way, depending on who it is saying it and what that's about.
And yet there's a great and I think it Chris. Oh, there's a black comedian in America who stood up on stage, looked out, and he said, "Whoa, look at all these white people." And he said, "Which one of you wants to swap with me?" And no one answered. And he pointed to a guy and he said, "What about you? Do you want to swap with me?" And the guy said, and the guy called back and said, "No." And he looked up at his audience and he said, "See, white people know black people have got it harder. There's a dude over there in a wheelchair and even he wouldn't swap with me and I'm rich." And that's funny because it's true. And it is a form of satire to sometimes just point out the obvious.
Yeah. And it's a joke at himself and at white people in general.
And he's punching up.
At public attitudes.
As a black man, he's punching up. So it's acceptable. Now, if a white comedian made that joke, I'd possibly have issue with it.
And
some
hello to Microraptor.
Yeah.
And
Well,
How did the dogging go, Dave?
yeah.
Any puppies on the way, Dave?
Yeah.
was that comment a satire on the puppy god, Hissy?
Oh, maybe. Not even.
But the point is, you don't have to say.
Yeah.
Unsatisfying.
And I came here all prepared for a nice academic discussion, and then this happened.
Yeah. Well, what do you expect? This is media
Satire.
musings. We
Of course.
it devolves into
Damn it,
chaos.
Dad! It's your
I'd
fault.
blame me too. Yeah, I'm the one who noticed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So exactly, Microraptor. That joke is more of a jab at inequality than at white people.
Yeah.
But implied in that is the fact that white people are at the top of that hierarchy that's having a jab made at it.
And that does depend on what country you're in. If you're if you're a white person in a predominantly black country, or a predominant or an Indian country, or you know, like in an Indian country, in India. God, Bennett, what's wrong with my brain? you are going to be a minority in that environment.
Yeah.
And white people in those locations do suffer some of the same kind of prejudices that black people suffer, say, in America or the UK, or even Aboriginal people in Australia. So
I can't comment because I've not been in those countries, but I do find there's a level of privilege that being or passing for white does grant in certain countries, I think.
It definitely does. There are countries where it doesn't, though. There are definitely countries where it doesn't grant any privilege. I mean, but on the whole, white people on the whole do have privilege everywhere, almost everywhere. Almost everywhere that they're probably prepared to go, because there's that attitude of it too. Most white people won't go where they don't think they're going to have privilege.
Yeah. And of course, there's also satires that poke fun instead of at society or groups in power. They poke fun at concepts and genres. Like, for instance, I didn't realize until we started dissecting it that The Princess Bride was a satire.
But it's such a good satire that
it is.
Yeah.
It's a very gentle satire.
I don't think it is.
Yeah,
I think it's a brilliant example of satire done incredibly well. So well that if you're not looking for it, you wouldn't notice it. And that's the beauty of satire, that it has pure deniability at every stage.
It's also an unusual satire in that it's almost one that it could survive the changes of generations. Yeah. So it's going to be functional for a long time. Because of the genre.
And because of what it's satirizing.
Yeah.
If I satirize today's government, that's not going to make sense in 50 years. Except to historians.
However,
but
you can
if I satirize British weather, that's going to make sense until climate change.
It's like for
10 years.
Well, look, a good example would be because there's a show where some of it really stands up well today, but then because some of it was topical to the time, other bits don't stand up. There was a sketch show called Not the 9 O'Clock News in the early 80s in Britain. Some of the gags from that do stand up well today. I mean, that's a little bit, they're a little more blatantly obvious. I mean, like some of them are still relevant issues today. Like, I mean, the Constable Savage sketch, police racism is still a thing today. That was a really good,
whereas
incredible. I mean, it was an incredible. It was a good little poke at the fact that there is racism in the police. And it's still relevant.
And then you've got, for example, the Faulty Towers don't mention the war sketch. That stands up because everyone knows about the war.
Yeah.
And everyone understands that British manners say we don't talk about what makes us uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why that stands up. Not because it's about the Second World War, because it's not, but because it's a satire on British manners.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at with it's the difference between what is and what never, what should be. Or perhaps more accurately, what is and what never should be.
Yeah.
You take this situation, you point at an extreme, and you go, "Look at this. This is ridiculous."
Yeah, you essentially create a straw man and then tear it down.
Well,
yeah, it is. It's about creating your own straw man and tearing it down for humor effect.
I'd say less creating a straw man and more reductio ad absurdum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although you don't necessarily have to reduce or minimize a concept in order to satirize it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where you can end up with a straw man instead, where you're taking it and you're taking it to the next level, which is often.
So,
yes, that's reductio absurdum, but you because you're keeping the other elements and you're probably tacking on a few more just to show how ridiculous it can get. You are building a straw man in that sense.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, that exaggeration is a necessary component of satire.
Yeah,
you have to exaggerate it to some extent, otherwise it's not satire; it's just a straight up criticism.
Yeah.
And it's the level of analysis and how much analysis you give it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's see, some of the best, like sometimes some of the best subversion is stuff that you don't even realize that's there on the surface.
I mean, how many people think The Simpsons is a satire?
Maybe in its early
I
It's only got satirical elements.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of more recent episodes, but I'm
classic Simpsons.
Okay, so I'm going to say it started as a satire, of the stereotypical, nuclear family sitcom of the time.
Yeah.
And then kind of progressed into its own thing.
I think in a lot of ways, I think The Simpsons has kind of almost become the thing that it was originally rebelling against, perhaps, in a lot of ways. But
that's a big danger with satire as well. A lot of satire goes down that route. But that's the thing. That only happens with satire when the audience doesn't understand that they're engaging with satire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when the writers forget that it's satire and it's not straight up comedy. Because there is a difference.
Yeah.
But you can have a straight up comedy that uses satire as part of its tools.
Satire
is a tool of comedy, so it is used.
I mean, for a British example, Only Fools and Horses, Del Boy is the stereotypical, London market trader, wheeler dealer, all that kind of thing. There's one episode where he tries to be a yuppie, and that's pure satire on, on that concept.
Yeah.
But it's also the fact that he sees yuppie as a very an term of endearment or whatever. Normally, it was a bit of a term meant to mock.
Jab.
It was a bit of a jab. It was a bit of a jab at the sort of the young, rich, upwardly mobile people of the 80s and whatever. That did seem to, I suppose, what did seem to flex their wealth a bit as well.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a jab. Yet Del Boy sort of almost saw that term as some term of endearment.
I still love the Batman Robin one.
And Microraptor, yes, and in fact that fact was called out in a arguably better satire by Matt Groening, Futurama.
Yeah. Futurama to me is an excellent. That's just the perfect satire of Star Trek.
I love Futurama. I think it's much better than
Futurama is more of a general, far future sci-fi satire. It's not specifically satirizing Star Trek. Now, certain elements,
even if it was, would they admit it?
Well, no,
Well,
certain
they did-
elements.
They did
certain
an
elements
episode where it was
of
very obvious they were. But
yeah. Well, certain elements of Futurama are obviously very much a satire of Star Trek. For instance, Zap Brannigan is a satire of Captain Kirk.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
But like they have
Well, they even
other-
had him sing Kirk's song.
well, heck, they also satirize young Earth creationists in Futurama. Because there's
Is there
that
anyone they didn't satirize in Futurama?
yeah.
Well, that's the thing.
I-
Is anyone
Yeah.
that was the question you started with us? Is there anyone who is not fair game for satire?
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
And I think when we say that, I think, is there any public figure who's not fair game for satire or any public concept? Because I will absolutely stand by mocking the families or the children of famous or public figures is beyond the pale.
Yeah.
And
I
will not
agree.
stand for it.
Um,
Now, for example, there's a standing joke, and every British person who hears this is going to giggle. Anytime it became a standing joke for a while that David Cameron left his kid in a pub.
Yeah.
It became a standing joke, but that wasn't a joke at the expense of the children. That was a joke at the expense of the father.
Yeah.
And the irresponsibility of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And it
remember
was
that.
very
one.
carefully stayed on that side of the line.
Yeah.
There were never any jokes about, why did he leave the kid? It was always, ha ha, he left his kid behind and this is the man we have running the country.
Yeah.
If he forgot his kid, what else is he forgetting? That kind of thing.
Well,
And
I
I will say tragedies definitely need to be handled with care.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Definitely.
yeah.
There are ways of satirizing tragedies. Like Dad's Army is a great satire of the
Oh, it is.
Second World War.
Yeah. Or
Absolutely, yeah.
or
But can you
even-
imagine if it had got into the
Yeah.
nitty-gritty of the Second World War and other things that were happening in conjunction?
or the producers satirized a particular party in power during the Second World War.
World War.
Mm.
Yeah.
Was it? What was it?
Now,
No, I
I-
can't say it
that
because
is-
we might get done for it.
Yeah, that's
No,
why
but
I was
don't-
being circumspect.
Yeah. So the producers is done very well.
Yeah.
Because it's satire. It's a satire within a satire.
Yeah.
But I love John Barrowman's version of the song in that.
Yeah. John Barrowman's version. The
Which I
first time
can't
I
even
saw
say.
that, I looked at it, I was like, is that John Barrowman?
Yeah.
But it is just it's done very well, but you have to create degrees of separation to make certain things palatable.
Yeah.
Well, even like Spaceballs, if you're going to talk about, I mean, I don't necessarily like everything that Mel Brooks did. I find some of
Well, I don't necessarily want to
yeah.
sit through a film of a guy speaking a dead language and misery put. No.
No, you're thinking of Mel Gibson. We're talking Mel Brooks.
Brooks.
Oh right, sorry, wrong Mel.
Wrong
Mel.
Or is it?
but with Mel
But what
Brooks,
if it isn't?
gotta give him props. He understood satire.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
He did. I mean, certain things I enjoy. I mean, the one with the classic one with the 10 Commandments, whatever. It was originally 15, and
Yeah.
it's coming off the Moses drops one of the tablets. So I have these 15 commandments. Oh, smash! I have these 10 commandments.
Yeah.
Oh, there was nothing important on that one.
Yeah.
That's funny. Whereas I'm possibly going to cause an argument. I don't like South Park.
I
do like it, but I think there's some of it's too.
lacks nuance and it
some of
lacks
it-
real
some of it is-
satirical value.
It's occasionally brilliant.
Occasionally, that's
yeah.
the problem.
It is.
You-
I mean, things like I
You
think
have-
the Facebook
Flash
one
in the
was
pan.
the Facebook one was brilliant. when Facebook first became a big thing, and it was a lot of it was like, yeah, actually, people like like the way when Stan hadn't got round to adding his dad or his girlfriend on Facebook yet because he didn't really want to get too into it. So they're like, so I'm not your friend. And and you do realize actually there is kind of people that do act like that.
There are episodes on Scientology and Mormonism were hilarious. I will grant that. But
this is what I'm saying.
Time,
they are not the rule; they are the exception.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with South Park, so I cannot comment on this.
Yeah, no, I would agree. If you get, I mean, what they do about 20 episodes a season or something like that of them.
I mean,
and I think you're lucky if you get two that are worth watching.
Three or four of them are pretty good, and the rest are meh. Yeah.
So I will mention something that I know Ring can comment on.
Exactly.
Satirization of the French Resistance. Hello.
I think Hello is more of a farce than a satire.
Well, it's actually there is actually
where's the line?
There is actually something. It was based off of a series called Secret Army, which was a bit more of a serious thing about like the French Resistance. It actually became more popular than the thing. It was one of the things it was parodying. Ironically, in Secret Army, Guy Sinner, who plays Lieutenant Gruber in Hello, was in Secret Army. But sorry, are you getting all this? Because I shall say this.
Yeah, we're hearing you.
Yeah, we're hearing you.
Yeah, because I shall say this only once.
I shall say this only once.
I mean, when you're talking about that, Hogan's Heroes was in earlier, but it was in a very similar sort of vein to LOLO.
And I will say as well, the film Kelly's Heroes.
Yeah, Kelly's. Okay, no, I will talk about Kelly's Heroes.
Okay, go. We'll go to Kelly's Heroes because I haven't seen it.
So, okay, for those of you who haven't,
I haven't seen it.
Clint Eastwood, you've never seen it.
I haven't.
Okay, so for those of you who haven't seen it, Jen,
damn it, Jen.
Can I take this out so I don't get spoiled?
I'm going to say I have seen it, but it's been so long I can't really remember much of it.
The pretty colours.
Maybe I have seen it. I just don't remember because it was so long ago.
So, anyways, for those of you who haven't seen it, Kelly's Heroes is a World War II flick starring Clint Eastwood as Staff Sergeant Kelly, and he finds out that that the Nazis have a stash of gold in this town that's due to be assaulted. So he gets his unit together to get there first to steal the gold. And
Capers and shoe.
Yeah. And speaking as a vet, Kelly's Heroes is the best military movie I have ever seen because it gets military culture perfectly and completely satirizes the hell out of it.
And it's very much, I think it's one of those that I think I bought my dad a copy of the DVD, didn't I? Yeah. But it's if you've seen any war film, you've seen Kelly's Heroes. Because it's got all the elements of a war film, a little bit from a crime caper in there, and it's just hilarious.
Yeah.
Like the guy who's second in command's a stoner.
Yeah. You've got the hard ass, NCO. Mm. You've got the officer who's too busy trying to figure out how to get his war trophies home past trying to get his war trophy boat home.
Yeah.
The specialist is a stoner slacker guy who loads,
and yet without him it couldn't work.
Yeah, without him it couldn't work. And he loads his tank full of paint. So it paints pretty colors.
Yeah. We don't have
so
any
it's like a
ammunition, so we
wartime
fill
version
it
of
with
Ocean's
paint
11.
and it makes pretty pictures.
Yeah.
Is it like a wartime version of Ocean's 11?
Kind
No.
of, but funnier.
I,
Because Ocean's
Oh,
11
that wouldn't be hard.
straight.
I will say it's not, it's not really a it's not as heisty as Ocean's 11.
Knock it off with them negative waves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why don't you knock it off with them? Like one of the catchphrases in it is, you've got the specialist there and they're looking at a situation, and the situation to any reasonable person is just dead in the water.
Yeah.
The lieutenant points this out, and the specialist looks at him, takes a cigarette or whatever it is he's smoking.
Yeah.
We don't comment on that.
Yeah.
Why don't you knock it off with them negative waves?
Yeah. And
the one little guy who always ends up carrying the artillery and moaning.
Yeah, and or another good military satire. It's more recent, and to be fair, I've only seen a bit of it.
Men Who Stare at Goats.
No. I think it was done by HBO. I might be wrong. But Catch-22.
Not seen it.
Yeah, I've only seen bits of it. So it takes place during World War II, the aerial bombing campaign in Italy.
Okay.
There's this great scene where the
casino.
What?
The casino.
What are you thinking of? Monte Casino.
Monte Casino, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the Allied, Italy campaign.
Yeah, Monte Casino.
Yeah. So, brilliant scene where the general's like going over the latest bombing run on Rome. And he brings up a slide and there aren't any craters. He's like, "What the fuck is this? Why is this clear?" And then the aide comes up, whispers in his ear. He's like, "Oh, that's the Vatican. Good job."
Officers can't read maps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
so Kelly's Heroes very much it's like Good Morning Vietnam.
Yeah.
That's a great satire. That's up there with Kelly's Heroes.
And of course, now you can have a satire that has, real heart to it. And since we are talking military satire right now, I'm going to bring up MASH, the elephant in the room.
Yes.
Yeah.
You hurted it.
Do we want to talk film or TV series or both?
I've only seen episodes of the TV series.
I think the movie's better.
I personally am swayed more towards the movie. But I mean, there are certain things about it that I mean,
it hasn't aged well, either of them.
Well, yeah, there's certain things, even people like veterans or whatever who were part of MASH units had issues with in the film. Like saying, there's no way that they would have got
away with that.
There's no way they would, in reality, they would have treated their like top nurse the way they treated Hot Nips in MASH, in the film of MASH,
or spoken to their commanding officers the way they did.
Yeah.
Well, and Microraptor, it's more the point that the Vatican is actually a separate country and was actually neutral. So it would have been a war crime.
Yeah, like the church doesn't have a history of that at all.
Yeah, that's
not satire, that's sarcasm.
It was a technicality. It's a technicality.
So yeah, I just there was something I wanted to talk about with satires. I mean, we've seen have dodged round Yes Minister.
Yeah.
We must get on to Yes Minister at some
We
point.
will, but I think Yes Minister is almost a topical on its own because,
Yeah.
in all honesty, I think it's one of the best satires ever made.
Oh yeah, I'd have to agree, and I'm not even.
I like the thick of it in some respects, but it's not a pinch on what they achieved with Yes Minister, especially at the time when it was made.
Yeah,
and Microraptor, welcome to Media Musings, where I purposefully misunderstand the joke to make the joke go further.
well, there's
it's just something I do.
There's another political sitcom from the 80s as well that I very, very different to Yes Minister, but I think really underrated is the new Statesman, which was a Rick Mail thing. So there's obviously a little bit more of an anarchic, but it's I'd say in a lot of ways it's more about the it was political, but also more about the greed culture in a lot of ways. And he where he just represents the, the absolute, truly that you've got a character in the Right Honourable Alan Bastard MP. Catch the pun there,
Bastard.
Yeah, and it's truly a character that has not got a single redeeming human quality about him whatsoever. He's greedy, power hungry, he untrustworthy, sadistic, perverted. You name a bad human quality in someone, Bastard has got it.
Politician, then.
Yeah. I mean, Rick Mail actually said to the writers that he said that he wanted, he loves playing characters that have not a single redeeming future whatsoever, that are all these things. I said, how would you like to play a Tory backbencher? And he's like, but it's almost, but the thing that makes it so good is not only does he have all these qualities, he sees nothing wrong in being like that. He sees that as like, that's virtuous to him,
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it as well is with. I think satire that stands up because it picks at a universal truth regardless of the context. So you can have a satire like something like Blackadder, which most people, we all know that Blackadder is funny, but Blackadder is not funny because it's about a late 19th century rich man and his servant. Blackadder's funny because it's about the tension between classes.
Yeah.
I just spotted what Microraptor put in the chat there.
Based on Duff Dawkins.
And or for instance, well, I don't know, because there are satires that are, clearly products of their time that still work today. Like for instance, Dr. Strangelove.
Yes, but Dr. Strangelove still works because we still understand that technology is dangerous.
Yeah.
So you can replace in Dr. Strangelove, you can replace the bomb with a computer virus, and the message is still the same.
And,
that's why, because
of course,
the basic premise hasn't changed. It's just the decoration that changes.
And of course, the jabs at international politics and capitalism are still relevant.
Exactly.
But if you don't get through to the president, you're going to have to take it up with the Coca-Cola company.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's this.
It'd be Disney now.
This is why 70s and 80s satires still stand up, because politically, the Cold War may have officially ended.
Yeah.
But most people know, to some extent, have an understanding that those tensions are still there.
Yeah.
Well, of course they are. I mean, we still have nuclear weapons around the place. We still have strong political powers vying against each other.
It's like, again, going to Only Fools and Horses, there was an episode where they built a bomb shelter a nuclear bomb shelter, a nuclear fallout shelter, spent all the time in it. And then the last joke of the episode was, oh, if there's a nuclear attack, we'll be safe as houses. No one's going to hit our bomb shelter here. And it pulls back and the bomb shelter was on top of a block of flats. Because they had nowhere else to put it.
Yeah.
You know, things like that. Sort of the working class experience is great for satire. Every sperm is sacred, anyone?
Yeah.
That's great because it's a great satirization on how the church basically brainwashes poor people into having too many kids.
And of course, you know, you can satirize religious concepts without actually making it about religion. Like, for instance, Good Omen.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Yeah,
Good Omens is definitely a satire of Revelations.
Oh,
well, yeah, it is.
amazing.
Yeah, it's a satire of Revelations, but that's not the point of the point
But
it's trying to make.
even if you had no understanding of Christianity, you would still enjoy that show.
Yeah.
And that's the key to satire. You have to be able to watch satire straight up and enjoy it as well as you would with the context for it to truly be satire. You know, I can. Everyone knows it's more anthropology than satire, but most people have heard of the example of the Great Cat Massacre.
Yeah.
The Great Cat Massacre is not great satire; it's anthropology. Why? Because for so long, no one understood it. But then you think, actually, they did. The reason no one understood it is because no one asked the working class person what it meant and why it was funny. The minute working class people got into anthropology, it was like a light bulb switched on. And that happens all the time. It's the stories of, you know, historians digging up an archaeological site and not knowing what something is and then going and finding a workman and him saying, yeah, look, I've got one.
Yeah.
It's that. It's that what you should know and what you do know. And it's that humour of these people, these supposedly the brightest minds on the planet, don't know something simple. And, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's all that kind of humour that comes through in satire. Life of Brian did do a good job of satirising religion without attacking a specific one. I can't think of anything that satirizes religion that well as Life of Brian.
Yeah.
I'd be hard pressed to think of anything else except maybe schoolyard jokes in a Catholic high school. But that's for a totally different reason. That's just because we were sick of it and we needed an outlet. So for example, I'll give you a perfect anecdotal example of satire. I went to a Catholic school, very strict. The uniform was a knee-length skirt.
Yeah.
It was a blouse buttoned up and a blazer buttoned up. And the teachers were so strict about this. It was low-heeled shoes. It was the classic, very put together. So strict. One year they put on a play. The teachers did a play for us because they were raising money for charity or something, like a panto. And one of the sketches in it was one of the teachers playing a girl going off to her first day at school.
Yeah.
And the teacher sent her off and she looked all pretty and her parents are acting like, you know, oh, don't you look so smart? Don't you look so good? You're going to be brilliant. She nods and smiles. Parents wander off, leave her at the school gates. She watches to make sure they're gone. The minute they're gone, skirt gets rolled up, blouse gets opened, shoes are off into a bag and her heels are out. You know, blazer's open, hair's a mess, makeup goes on. And the thing is, that was funny to us because we all related to it because that's what we all did.
Yeah.
And it was the difference between the ideal schoolgirl and what we all really were. That was the funny bit. And it was that moment of, oh, the teachers actually get it. The teachers understand.
Yeah.
They don't think our parents send us to school looking like this. They know better. And it's that ideal. It's that gap.
Yeah.
And you see that in other examples in everyday life as well, but I like that one. it's this is why I like satire, because it makes you think.
Yeah.
If you're watching satire and you're not thinking, if it doesn't challenge you to really look at a situation, it's not satire.
Yes.
It's bad satire.
And
I'm doing a lot of talking this week, so someone jump in.
yeah, and of course now the question is like what to do when satire and reality tend to bleed together. So there are two ways, that can kind of happen when reality gets so terrible that satire can't do it justice anymore. Cough 2020 cough.
Mm.
The darkest timeline cough. Or slightly more wholesome or potentially more wholesome when someone does something satirical in the real world.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, Shannon Q starting the Church of Sexual Humanism, and then raising the money. So, in AIG's name to pay for scholarships for LGBT students.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a way of using satire as a means of activism.
Yeah.
It's also a form of irony.
And satire does have an excellent history of being used as activism.
It does.
Going back to early caricatures, again, American Revolution, caricatures of British officers were used to raise morale amongst the troops.
Yeah.
Everyone's drawn a funny picture of a teacher at some point in class. That's a caricature. That's satire. You're satirizing someone. Everyone's had that one teacher that they called the word we're not allowed to say or we'll get cut off.
Yeah. Though there are also times when satire backfires. Like, for instance, you're talking about the satirization of British officers in colonial America. Well, the British tried to do that with Yankee Doodle Dandy, and us dumb Yanks took it as a badge of honor.
See, that happened with Old Milk Snatcher.
Yeah.
When the Russians called her the Iron Lady, that wasn't meant to be a compliment.
Well,
no.
Well, if you're going to go down there, on that route,
don't go down there. Do not go down there. Even when she was alive, don't go down there.
I was going to say spitting image.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
This was, for those who don't know, this was a show in Britain in the 80s and 90s where it was a political satire show. Now, a lot of it won't stand up now because the jokes were relevant to what was going on in the news at the time. And
Spitting Image was just live action caricature.
It was it was caricatures. It was latex puppets that were made of very famous people, but mainly centered around politics. And in a certain way that they were supposed to be ridiculing Thatcher's sort of high-handed haughtiness. It actually ended up in a lot of ways doing her some favors, though, I think.
Just before you proceed, can I point something out? I never named the politician I was talking about. You assumed I meant Margaret Thatcher.
No, I did
because I said Milk Snatcher.
I knew. There's a clue there.
But again, it's that example of satire. It's deniable.
Yeah.
Just like saying Maybob or,
Bojo.
Bojo
the clown.
Exactly.
Bojo the
exactly. Clown. Bojo the clown. How many people, that's satire. That's satirizing someone.
Or the greatest president who did the most for minorities and women ever.
That's
And he
well,
has-
I think Bojo's another example of satire becoming unfortunately sad
Real.
reality, really, you know.
Mm,
Because he got popular because he was a guest host on Have I Got News for You, which is a political
satire show.
it's a satire show.
Yeah.
He guest hosted that once, got very popular on there when he was an MP because he was a bit buffoonish and clownish. Was almost the thing that started launching him on this trajectory to being
It's the Alan
yeah.
Sugar effect, isn't it? If you host a TV show that claims you're a good businessman, even if
Trump.
you're not, you'll become a good politician.
Again, Trump, because you know those who don't know any Americans in the audience who don't know who Alan Sugar is. He hosted the British version of The Apprentice.
Yes, and
He
then
owned
became a lord.
And he owned Amstrad.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So basically, you're saying hosting The Apprentice didn't just work for Orange Brother.
Mm-mm.
Oh, it definitely worked for Lord Sugar as he is now.
Yeah, Lord
He
Sugar.
thought he was Steve Jobs. That's who Alan Sugar is.
Oh, no, he was I could get into Sugar, but that's a bit of a different.
Alan Sugar's just a nasty
like-
piece of work.
that'd
I'm
be
not
going
keen
off-
on him at
that'd
all.
be going off topic to go into. His,
Or to give
Only
another
very
example of satire, there used to be a time when you could satirize the next thing to come out of J.K. Rowling's mouth about the Harry Potter series. You can't do that anymore because you don't know what's coming next.
Yeah,
She's gone so extreme, you just can't do that anymore.
yeah.
In all honesty, you could probably say the most extreme thing you could think of, and it still wouldn't be as bad as the next thing that came out of her
Exactly. When she comes out and says Harry would be on the side of the Israelis in the Israel-Palestine conflict, you look and you sort of think, well, my headcanons aren't that stupid.
mouth. No, she really is. I love her current thing where she made that press release about handing back her award, and then the award organization says,
No,
we
we were
contacted
stripping
her
you
a
of it.
couple of days ago. We were stripping her of it.
Yeah.
She was just trying to get ahead of the news story.
And of course, you know what's a Media Musings episode without circling around to our
Our
favorite
favorite
punching bag, to our favorite metaphorical punching bag.
Punching
Yes,
bag,
no
yeah.
violence.
No violence inherent in the system.
And of
Because
course,
she's certainly not being repressed.
yeah, and of course we are talking satire and being the tasteful comedians we are punching up.
Yes.
Yeah.
None of it.
Yeah, JK. I mean, J.K. Rowdy is really just a parody of herself.
Mm.
Yeah, I said I mentioned Spitting Image though, and it was, but in a weird way, that in a strange way humanized a lot of the figures that they were mocking. I mean, it was. I'll say this: it was unheard of before Spitting Image to mock the royal family on British media. It was absolutely unheard of. That it was one of those things.
But now it's a standing joke with Charlie and his cabbages, isn't it?
Yeah. And but in a way, I mean, the thing is, it's like Prince Philip's become the main caricature of his own Spitting Image puppet. He's
The thing is, with that, Prince Philip has a reputation for being and I have to be careful how I say this because I don't know if they'll sue me. I'm going to say it anyway because there's nothing they can sue me for. A blatant racist and bigot. He has that reputation. A lot of that reputation comes from Spitting Image. The problem is, at some point, life began to imitate art.
Yeah.
Or maybe art was imitating life. And that's the danger with satire as well.
And
someone asked J.K. Rowling if, in response to Microraptor, someone asked J.K. Rowling the other day, why weren't there any Jewish wizards at the thing?
Anthony Goldstein.
Yeah, that was her answer. And
yeah, no, but I knew that anyway. With a name like that, it's Anthony Goldstein.
Yeah, it is. But could you have a more... I mean, I know she's done it with all her characters. She's just gone, generic name that sounds like.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, she could have had a David Cohen, but...
Well, you've got to remember...
Let's have a Goldstein, because that's definitely Jewish.
You've got to remember
that she has Cho.
You got to remember.
Oh, Joe Chang.
You got to remember.
Joe Chang.
So
remember
to steer
her,
away
like,
from
Yeah.
our favorite author,
Okay, Rowdy.
our favorite
Rowdy.
author on Media Musings, Scummer made an interesting point about how, you know, certain topics are taboo to begin with, and then the, you know, the time essentially becomes right for satirization. And I'm gonna give a little teaser, because in my opinion, Dr. Faustus possibly couldn't have been written any, you know, a play like Dr. Faustus couldn't have been written any earlier than it actually was, because there's a scene where Dr. Faustus and Mephistopheles literally just dick around with the Pope.
Yes, but which Pope? I'm trying to think which Pope it would be.
It's the Pope isn't named, it's just the Pope.
Well, yeah, but again, the figure of the Pope was probably off limits for.
It's, you know, it's less, you know, dicking around with us, you know, it's less poking fun at a particular figure like a la Dante Alighieri setting Pope to hell, and more, you know, poking fun at the Catholic institution itself, because
this was under Elizabeth I, wasn't it? So under a Protestant regime.
This was under, well, actually I think it was under James, but still it was under a Protestant ruler. And you know, you can't have a play punching at religion without having an other religion to punch at in those times.
But the thing is, there is a difference between structural irony and satire.
Yeah.
There is a line, and I'm not entirely sure Dr. Faustus crosses it.
Yeah. And I actually, as I was talking, a better example came to my mind with Dr. Strangelove, you know, being dismissed when it was released as being too pinko, and, you know, poking fun at a very serious topic, but now it's regarded as one of the greatest movies of all time.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
But so for example, Dr. Faustus, the main thing that's satirizing is the hubris of the character.
Yeah.
That is something that goes all the way back to ancient Greece. That concept of hubris.
Yeah.
And hubris being the downfall of character, or of an otherwise virtuous character, or the opposite of the ideal.
Yeah.
That's something you can trace all the way back to ancient Greece, probably further. But, you know, my specialty is ancient Greece and Rome, so. It appears in the Epic of Gilgamesh. It appears in, you know.
And of course, I'm gonna keep us out of the weeds for you know, from going out of the weeds on this particular instance, because we do have an upcoming episode on that.
Well, I mean, it's about something as well that broke down some. I mentioned it maybe earlier in the chat before I jumped in, actually, but like there was one of the shows that broke a lot of barriers was a stage show in the sort of 50s and 60s in Britain called Beyond the Fringe. Which was very was, you know, I mean, I suppose politicians that had been mocked in Britain before, but not in this sort of way. That no way anywhere like this. And I mean, this was Beyond the Fringe. This was Jonathan Miller, Alan Bennett, Peter Cook, and Dudley Moore.
I mean, to be fair, politicians had been mocked, but they'd been mocked in writing or in art, not on TV or in film, not in movie media.
Well, it started on. I mean, this show obviously started on stage, and then obviously did sort of make it to radio and television and so on. And obviously then Peter Cook and Dudley Moore became the stars of that and broke out on their own.
When that was in the 60s, wasn't it?
Yeah, 50s to the it was in the 50s and 60s. I mean, and I mean the actual, it became such a big thing as the stage show that the Prime Minister of himself at the time went to the show, and unfortunately Peter Cook spotted him and decided to do his impression of him and just basically humiliate. We've got Prime Minister's name was Harold Macmillan. He basically just humiliated Harold Macmillan publicly. And it was like, this was unheard of, you know. The only problem was Macmillan couldn't say much about it because apparently in the other box there was another box where the Queen was there and she was chuckling away to herself whilst he was doing it. So,
yeah, I mean, there's I literally, my Facebook memories this morning, a picture of a map of England and the word England striped out and the word Rome written under it. Two of you got the joke. I think Jeff did as well. But that's satire. I didn't have to explain to you what that was about, but you know, because you understand the context.
Yeah.
And that's what satire does. You can look at it, and someone who does not understand that context is going to look and go, you what? Someone who does is going to laugh.
Yeah.
That's good satire. Great satire would be something like, and I'm going to come back to it on the same thing as Monty Python, the Romans Go Home sketch.
Yeah.
Because that is funny just to watch. You don't have to understand any background. You don't have to know anything about it. It's just funny to watch. It's slapstick.
Yeah.
But it's when you
like
do
the fish slapping dance.
There's a lot of
there's a lot of layers. There's a lot of layers to this. Because there is
satirization of upper class schoolboys and school teachers. It's a satirization of political oppression. It's a satirization of imperialism.
Yeah.
And that all, but you don't have to understand any of that to still find that scene funny.
So what you're saying is satire is like onions.
That's layers.
No, it's
more like parfait. Everyone likes parfait.
The onion.
Although I think my favorite Monty Python thing would be from Meaning of Life at the school scene where they're teaching sex ed.
Oh, the sex ed.
And the whole reverse thing, like, it's the example. It's going to just demonstrate, and the kids aren't interesting. Well, look out the window. They're playing sport. They're paying attention to the sex talk.
And the teacher's straight face throughout.
Well,
throughout.
I'd even say with some satire, I think the thing Hissy and I cover on a weekly basis has got some damn good satire in that at times.
Yeah.
Asterix has got some brilliant. Okay, we as we pointed out today, unfortunately, it's got its things where it's punching down at people as well. It does unfortunately have that, but there's also some fantastic and things you wouldn't necessarily things that different people are going to pick up on different things in this. Like, I mean, there's jokes that I've read all those things. There's jokes Hissy's picked up on that I'd never spotted before because she knows, because of her knowledge of classics and so on. Like some of the Latin jokes and stuff, she picks up on them where I don't.
So it does work on different levels. It's like the what was I going to say? Like, even we've made reference to it. You said onions. I guarantee you, every person watching this, right now and in future, knows what we're making reference to. You haven't named it.
No.
Because you didn't have to, because everyone understands the context.
Yeah.
And
even
that's
if
what
they haven't
makes
seen
it
the
funny.
movie, someone's explained it to them at some point.
Though, to be fair, my terrible impression, did also give an extra little hint.
Yeah.
But exactly, that's the point. You've made the reference so obvious that it is, but you can also look and go, no, it's not. Onions do have layers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But but there's again, there's that's not, maybe it sounds like our minds went different places when Ring said that.
Oh yeah, because of course there is the satirical newspaper that has unfortunately fallen on hard times due to a lack of material.
Yeah.
Which is a satire comment in and of itself.
Yeah.
And that's... this is why I've always found satire funny, and this is why I think I love being into history and classics and everything else, because to truly get what's going on, you have to understand the context.
Yeah.
Well,
but you can also still find it funny. Just to go back, does everyone know the Great Cat Massacre?
I'm vaguely aware of it.
Okay, so a summary of the Great Cat Massacre. There's this rich old lady living with her husband, and she's got work people around the place. Mid to late 1700s, call it sort of Industrial Revolution time. And they're all being paid a pittance to work for her. And she is a nasty piece of work. She spits on them. She kicks them. She treats them as, nothing. She deliberately eats, really nice food in front of them, knowing they can't afford to eat. She buys all the best meat and brags about it in front of them. She has sugar in her tea, whereas they can't afford a tea bag. It's that kind of a thing. And she's nasty, but she's also got these cats. And she adores these cats. She loves them. These cats eat better than her workers eat. Yeah. These cats are pampered and cared for and everything else. So one day the workers get together and decide they've had enough of this. And they literally slit the throats of all the cats and hang them up and, put them on a really macabre display with blood everywhere. And when she sees it, the following morning, all the workers are there waiting for her. She sees it and she screams and she faints, and the workers find this hilarious. Now, if you don't understand the context that story is told in, it sounds horrendous.
Yeah.
But when you understand that it's a story about class struggle.
Yeah.
And it's a story about people punching up and fighting back. And the fact that she needled these men for months and months and years before they got to that. And then you put that in the context of the Industrial Revolution, where the poor, even though so much was going on and everyone was getting supposedly better off, the poor were still living in abject poverty. Suddenly it makes sense why they found it funny.
Yeah.
That's anthropology, but it's also a great satirical story.
But it's also it also repeats, because you see the same things now for any element of society which is being downtrodden by other people with privilege. You see that at the moment in the US with Black Lives Matter.
And I think the thing about that as well is, for years and years and years, they knew this story, and historians did not understand why it was funny. They couldn't get their heads around it. But the thing is, that was when historians were all upper class rich kids.
Yeah.
The minute anthropology started to broaden and bring in working class kids, that's when someone looked at it and realised that's why this is funny.
Yeah.
Because they had that context, they had that cultural background to understand.
Yeah.
And they could explain it, whereas before that there was no understanding.
Yeah.
And that, to me, even though it's a study in anthropology, that to me is a great example of how satire works as well.
Yeah, well, satire is often written for the class that's written it. That's why sometimes people who aren't part of that area can't understand it. It's often why if you have a minority group making some satire at the people oppressing them, the people who are oppressing it take offense at it instead of seeing it for what it is, which is a satire of the situation that they're in.
Well, and then of course sometimes they end up sometimes they end up satirizing themselves, a la the evangelicals petitioning Netflix to stop good old.
That is absolutely brilliant.
Or this concept of Karens.
Yeah.
Karens, the minute it was given a name, suddenly it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these Karens are taking offence because they don't understand that what's being satirised is their behaviour, not them as a person.
I actually feel sorry for anyone named Karen now.
Yeah. Now, I think we're gonna have to be careful, or else YouTube might cut us off for using the K word.
Really?
Really?
You can't say that. What happened if you had somebody on here who's actually called that?
Yeah.
She who must not be named. Is that what it becomes?
Or, a few years back it was Becky.
Well, we know what.
Remember when Becky was a thing?
Yeah.
Let's just say we know what the K in JK stands for now. I'll be back in 2 minutes, guys. All right. So.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, before we get to closing thoughts, since we're all somewhat active creators here,
somewhat.
Yeah. We are all three of us are kind of. All three of us are kind of somewhat at the moment because between organising the house for moving and stuff, I'm only putting out streams at the moment.
But anyway,
somewhat creators.
Yeah. So, we'll go around the table, for a bit of fun.
Okay.
And name something that you've made that you think could fall under the category of satire, and we'll evaluate it.
Well, that's okay. I can do that.
Well, you go first then while I think about it.
Do you mean stuff that we've made on YouTube or stuff I've ever made?
Yeah. I'll open it up completely,
because in the 90s I was on the writing crew for a radio comedy show.
Oh, really?
So I was. And unfortunately Jeff's not here to enjoy that, but I guess he will. The name of the show was Behind the Fridge. Yeah. Which is very close to Beyond the Fringe. So, it wasn't done deliberately, actually. We named it and then somebody pointed it out to us and go, well, we're not changing it. It's so cool because we all liked people who can Dudley more anyway. So it was like brilliant. But back when the Port Arthur Massacre happened in Australia and the government issued its buyback scheme, there were so many people who weren't taking it seriously. We thought it'd be great to parody the buyback scheme. So it was very topical and it wouldn't work now. But we did this whole thing about the government needing to buy back semi-automatic washing machines and twin tubs because of the number of people who'd fallen into them and killed themselves. and we did a whole thing. We even did we wrote an interview where they were interviewing somebody who did it, and there was a running gag in the particular episode we did in it about hamsters, and apparently because there was a thing that farmers could keep there was an actual thing with farmers could keep their weapons if they had legitimate uses for those particular types of weapons that were being brought back and banned. So farmers could keep their twin tubs if they were in hamster infested areas because we did this hamster gag throughout the entire thing. So we tied it all together. Very Monty Python. We were very Monty Python-esque. We had a lot of fun with that. We even did a thing about we did a thing poking fun at older actors who make bad opinions about things, which kind of fits in well with some people at the moment. Which we called the Grey and Thespian Mardi Gras. Which was a lot of fun, and I wrote a skit at the time called
Now that's a pride I would go to. Just
the Grey and Thespian. I wrote a skit called there used to be an airline in Australia called TAA, and they had this song "Up, Up and Away with TAA, the friendly way." I rewrote that and made a jingle about it.
But Qantas don't crash.
Yeah.
No, but that wasn't what the joke was. I changed it to Transsexual Airways, so it became TSA, and the song, and I did a whole thing about it, and I changed it up and away with the friendly bendy way, at the end of it. I did that, and it was the first time we got censored. We were told we were not allowed to make a joke at the expense of trans people, and I go, hang on a second, I'm a trans person making a joke about trans people. How is this possibly offensive? I am not punching down.
We have killed satire and sit on its throne like a corpse.
Yeah.
So
I was like,
though I will say sometimes, like for instance, animated kids shows in the 90s is like the go-to example. Satire gets really good when it's dancing around censorship.
Oh yeah.
Coffee
Well, that's what
Animaniacs
satire is
stop.
as well. The point is, you've got to be prudent. You've got to dance around the censors.
Yeah.
You know, it's got to have plausible deniability.
Yeah.
And
I'll have to
this
find
is the point
I'll
I
have
admit
to
I've
find
never
it.
really tried to write anything satirical or do anything like deliberately satirical. There's a lot of tropes in fan fiction that you can probably put down to or arguably are satirical in some element or other.
Well, I can name something that you did that was satirical. It wasn't exactly on your channel, but it is a running thing.
Go on.
What?
You named Torin's animal companion.
Yeah, I named a snake Jesus.
Yes.
Oh, brilliant!
I named a D&D character Jesus.
Yes.
And it was a snake.
Yes.
So whenever it gets hit by anything, Jesus has to save.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you would be surprised how many jokes.
Oh yeah.
Jesus
That's
saves.
Oh yeah. Jesus. Like in
Jesus is coming when I'm making a move.
Yeah. Yeah. Jesus is a veritable wellspring of jokes.
Yeah. Jesus is fun. You know, don't go anywhere without Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jesus has the power of healing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very satirical. It's very on the edge, but it is very satirical. So yeah. There's a lot of tropes though. There's an essay somewhere in how ABO fan fiction is.
I was listening into something a few seconds ago. I was listening to what Hissy was sort of saying there. Kind of reminded me something of the 1976 FA Cup final, which is where my team actually won its only major trophy. And
how you know about
a few Southampton fans brought this massive banner up that said Jesus saves, and then underneath it says Mick Shannon scores off the rebound.
Brilliant. It's like the hand of God in the football, the famous hand of God.
Maradona. Diego Maradona, yeah. So.
Yeah, that's been satirized so many times.
Well, that's one of those things that it would have been forgotten in time had Maradona not made that comment. For those anyone who does not know, we're talking the 1986 World Cup quarterfinal. Argentina and England. Diego Maradona he scored 2 goals. One of them was a very clear, blatant handball, but he got away. He got away with it. Now, England fans were not happy at the time, but I think he would have been forgotten. But when they won the World Cup.
Hey Jeff, guess what's just been mentioned in the comments? I'm cleaning windows.
Yeah. Oh dear.
Yeah, that's a perfect satire because that one and what's the other one? The Streak. My Dingaling. Anyone remember My Dingaling?
I want to play with my
Mississippi Squirrel Revival.
Mississippi Squirrel Revival is just fun.
Yeah.
But that's a great satire of manners, and there's some great satire when you look at social convention and stuff.
But anyways, Scummer, anything come to mind from your channel?
Not really.
That you do
no.
satirical.
I can't really honestly think of anything I've actually done. Because most of what I've done is commentary or just giving my opinions on things. Can't honestly think of anything I've done that's satire, because even when I've been sort of joking, it's been sort of pretty blatant, obvious who I've been mocking.
Yeah.
So yeah, I haven't.
Even if it's obvious, it can still be satire, unless, of course, you're outright speaking about who it is. Then your satire kind of falls into
this is it. I mean, I did it.
And
I did it.
glad you enjoyed the show Titan.
Titan.
I did a video about two and a half years ago now, when I was just going through just the list of all stupid fucking things Morrissey has said over the years. And
oh gosh.
And but it wasn't. I don't.
That list is going to be too long.
Even though I was like trying to be funny with it, it wasn't really satire. It was just this is how much of a wanker Morrissey is. It's just very
satire. It's fact.
It's just fact. It's got the most down. It's got the most downvotes on any video I've had, because I see a lot of Morrissey fans come in and downvote it.
I mean, I'm a Morrissey fan, but I can be a fan of his music without thinking the man's capable of stringing a sentence together.
Well, Hissy, I was just saying, you talked about Facebook memories earlier today. I music festival thing came up earlier today, and it was like 5 years ago. Johnny Marr was one of the acts I saw, and it's like I know Smiths fans for ages have been like to try like, Johnny Marr, can you please make an intervention with Morrissey, for fuck's sake?
Yeah, I mean,
because every time he speaks, a Smith song dies.
Yeah, something that's just occurred to me that's a little bit satirical. It might be satirical. I'll take a vote on it. My tagline.
It could be.
Because think about the implications of it.
Yeah.
And the adult implications of it.
Yeah.
Because it can be applied in a lot of different ways. So it's kind of, I don't know, it depends. But that's something that just popped into my head.
No, you can't. So you're talking about how it's stupid to think that to be an evolutionist and think that you came from a rock, when obviously you came from a rock that was molded by the hands of
yeah. He's run out of steam.
Yeah. When you're actually a sentient golem.
But
I actually think
Merrill.
I actually got to say, with that person you are making impression of, I think somehow you got to subtly get it to him that there are some atheists who think they are rocks, and see if he runs with it.
Yeah.
Oh, we reverse the whole thing around. There are atheists who think they're rocks instead of rocks that were atheists.
Yeah. No, but Merrill, do you remember when Merrill did those episodes on good and evil Merrill? Church Merrill and Devil Merrill.
Magdalene.
Merrill
Magdalene. Satire. Merrill
Magdalene.
Yeah. That's brilliant satire.
It's a history channel. And Aton Shea does some pretty brilliant satire with Checkmate Lincolnites.
Mm-hmm.
Where he dresses up as a Confederate soldier and reads Confederate apologist comments that he gets on his YouTube channel.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's funny.
Yeah.
OSP does a lot of satire.
Yeah.
Although again, the line between sarcasm and satire is a thin one.
Yeah. As for me, I think the most blatantly satirical thing I've done is Dungeons and Divinity.
Oh. I don't know. You've done a lot.
in regards to YouTube, that's probably the most blatantly satirical I've gotten.
Yeah. What we really should do is set up a satirical show where we all play the old... No, I tell you what I've done. The interview with Notcha.
Yeah.
Satirizing myself.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we've all done one of them.
Yeah.
Because
That was
is
fun.
what is that if not satirizing yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pointing out the difference between who you were and who you
Yeah.
are.
Oh,
And
man,
that
I was
twin.
cringy.
Oh gosh, don't get me started.
Weren't we all?
Yeah.
We all were. I mean, I was so cringy. I brought character deliberately so I could get drunk and didn't have to think about it. Because yeah.
So, shall we move to final thoughts?
Yeah, why not? Go on, Hissy, you started it.
Yeah.
Final thoughts. The best satire is the satire you don't know is satire.
Yeah.
100%
And that's
agree
satire.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that entirely. Yeah,
The
sometimes
more
the
subtle
best,
it is.
yeah, sometimes the best subversion is subtle. That would, I mean, there's a place for blatant, open ridicule as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely, but I think sometimes, especially especially because there's definitely places in the world where you cannot openly mock the.
Dave made this meta.
Yes, the show is satire.
No, but critical questions, on the other hand,
Yeah.
there's an argument to be made.
No,
I don't know.
critical
We're all
questions is a
supposed to answer honestly, so is it satire?
That depends if we're answering honestly or not. And
That's
even if we
true.
weren't, would we admit it?
Yeah.
Well, if you enjoy this show, no explanation is necessary. If you don't, no explanation will be good enough.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Jen, any final thoughts from you?
I just feel that satire is perhaps one of the best tools anyone can use if they're wanting to, for comedy, or just for pointing out the flaws in society in general. I mean, satire done right, as Hissy said, is subtle and you don't know that's happening. But satire done right is also a tool for people who are oppressed, because if you do the satire right, the people above, like in Hissy's example of the cats, don't know what it's about. But the people who are oppressed get it, and it gives a bit of a lift for those people. So satire is a brilliant tool.
Yeah. Yeah, satire is a brilliant tool if used right. But you've got to remember that satire is a scalpel, not a bloody claymore. And for someone who is the high priest of absurdist satire in the Church of Sexual Humanism, I'm not that good at satire.
We should fix that.
Yeah.
I think that is a satirical comment all its own, though. The fact that the high priest of absurdist satire isn't that good at satire.
Yeah. And
except
are you satirizing the role?
He is.
But he's still the god of puppies.
Yeah. Puppy god.
So,
all pets puppy god.
but of course, if I either confirmed or denied these allegations, it would kill the joke. So
Exactly.
So let's move to shilling.
What happens in satire stays in satire.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hissy.
Yeah, so I spend most of my time on Ring's channel, and when I'm not on Ring's channel, I'm on Jeff's channel. We do Asterix and Obelisk every week. This week we did Mansions of the God. What are we doing next week, Jeff?
George, I can't quite remember. Give me a second, I can tell you. So you have to get.
So
I can't
while
remember
he's
what the next
looking
book
at that, if you want to find out more about Snake Jesus, D&D on Ring's channel on Saturday evenings UK time. I'm sure Ring knows the time off the top of his head because he's brilliant that way.
Yeah, it's 8:30 UK time, 1:30 Mountain Standard Time.
Brill.
2:30 Central.
2:30 Central, there you go. So
Asterix and the Laurel Reef is what we're doing next week. That's book number 18.
Ooh, that sounds like it's got scope for a lot of satirization of the Romans.
Yeah,
Watch
I'm
this
trying to
space.
remember. I'm trying to remember this one. So
Laurel Reef, it's probably about a Roman triumph or a Roman emperor of some sort.
Mm.
Because those are the only two examples where we see laurel wreaths.
Who's Laurel Reeds?
He was
the brother of Hardy Reeves.
Reef was
okay.
He was the less successful double act with Laurel. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
This is another fine mess you got me into here, see.
And I would have gotten away with it too.
Oh!
See, again, I didn't have to finish the sentence.
Yeah.
I feel like we just descended into giving examples of satire at some point.
We have.
A dangerous thing to happen because it always happens when you get into discussions about satire.
Yeah,
it does.
You just have to start listing off examples. Otherwise, it's ineffable.
Oh, God.
It's the
Anyways, Jen, what do you've got going on?
What have I got going on? Next Wednesday, it should be about. I think will be about 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Times US, which is that's 9 p.m. for me, which is 2 p.m. for you guys in the UK. There'll be another news panel show. That's news to me. And then next Sunday, in the morning, there'll be another one in the evening for US time, 9 o'clock US. There should be another one. I'm actually going to be away, but I'm going to try and make sure I can still do it. So.
Jen, you were asked what you do for satire, and you didn't mention that's news to me.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't, but I was more interested in talking about the comedy show I wrote for.
Yeah.
I realize that it's satire too, but yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there is a bit of satire in your sex talk videos.
Oh,
Tiny little bit,
yeah. Just a smidge.
Just a smidge.
There's satire in a lot of my videos. I mean, even when I do my debunkings, the way I do it is satirical because you can't take people who are flat earthers seriously.
There is a point with them where it is you kind of and also a lot of the debunkers on YouTube, a lot of them they've got to a point with it where it's like we can't really do debunking as much as pointing laughing at them because all the points they've got to make have been debunked seriously already. Yeah. And and a lot of them are like I love his channel, but Creaky Blinder for a good example. He'll openly say, "Yeah, mine's kind of a point and laugh channel. It's not really a debunking."
Yeah.
Well, it's to the point where their arguments are so extreme and so exaggerated, you can't satirize them any further.
Yeah.
So at that point, satire becomes just pointing out where the
where essentially you've passed the event horizon. And reality has become satire, and satire has become reality.
Mm-hmm.
So you're entering a dimension. You're entering a dimension not of sight or of sound, but of mind and satire, where reality has become so extreme that you can't blow it out of proportion any longer. You have entered the Twilight Zone.
Well, I can always remember one of the, this might be the classic example of satire being dead. Is when the FIFA scandal was going on a few years ago. One of the executives, who's also a politician in Trinidad, called Jack Warner, who was indicted on a lot of this corruption stuff. When he tried to defend himself by holding up a newspaper article, which he said wasn't, which he was saying that FIFA is so bad. He said, why is it, according to this news article, we're giving the United States an extra World Cup in 2015 after we had one in Brazil in 20, why are we doing that if we're so bad?
It's
do you know
satire.
Do you know what he was holding up, thinking it was serious?
Probably Private Eye.
The Onion.
Close enough.
But anyway,
the funny thing is, it's like the implication there being that FIFA is that bloody corrupt and that farcically run that one of their own high executives could hold up that article and think it might actually be true.
No,
that's where you sell satire, isn't it?
Yeah,
very traditionally, the first half of Private Eye is straight up news. The second half is all satirical. You've gotten to the point where there's jokes now in the front pages.
Yeah.
And you can't tell the difference. Because the jokes are the news.
Yeah. So, and anyways, Saturdays I run secular D&D. And of course, Sundays we do media musings. In honor of Banned Book Week, next month is Lit Month or Literature Month, where we're just going to be focusing on literature.
Yeah.
No.
And of course, my not at all satirical, because obviously I'm terrible at satire, but my not at all satirical Teespring store is also an option where where I slap channel in jokes on needless commercialism.
Is the one about the Jesus statue in the Jesus statue in there?
Oh no, I think I may need to make I may need to make a Jesus statue merch. I doubt that would actually be fitting for Teespring though.
Yeah, probably not.
Maybe for OnlyFans.
maybe.
I know, because they're limiting how much you can pay on OnlyFans now because of that dipstick.
Yeah.
And the current scandal about that.
Oh.
I have friends who are sex workers. This is how I know this. I should say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so maybe not OnlyFans. Wait to see what the next thing that pops up is.
I'm the only person who could have an OnlyFans account and make a loss.
Oh, self-satire.
Self-deprecating humor, I think.
Yep, self-deprecating.
Yep.
That's not true, though, Jeff. Even though you were fishing for compliments, I guarantee you that's not true. Plus, I don't think they charge to have.
Oh, I don't think he was necessarily fishing, more like trolling.
Yeah.
Trolling.
But anyways, and of course, after Lit Month is over, we're probably restarting the Story Keepers stream.
Oh yeah.
And also, aside from that and War of the Worlds on Halloween, I'm not sure what else is coming up because I've got way too many topics. Thank you, Hissy.
Whoopsie!
Did you have fun there, Hissy?
I accidentally gave him a new topic because my brain did a thing.
Yeah, but anyways, I think Linda has it best, and we should move on to taglines.
Okay.
Yeah. Salute. That's mine. See you later.
Go on,
Take
Houston.
care, be good, and if you can't be good, be careful.
And remember, indoctrination is a hell of a selfie stick.
Bye.
Ring, you're supposed to end the stream, not
Not
take yourself out of the stream.